has been a bit. So much so that it's been a whole new year, and there are some updates, changes that are happening. One, I have moved, so this is a new space you're kind of seeing a little bit behind me. You will get a full tour of that in a later video. Also, if you do not know by the lighting, also this weird ass ring in my eyes, my sister was lovely enough to give me her old ring light because she got a new one, so I was like, well, this might improve my videos a little bit. A little more consistent lighting type of deal, so I guess enjoy that. You can see my lovely face now, and hopefully some other things a little bit better in the bright, and it opens up my filming time, so always a good thing. But this video is going to be long as it is, so please grab a cup of tea, grab a cup of something, because this is my final review of my depth year from 2019, which is a bit late. It should have happened in December, but life got hectic, so here we go. So first things first is I do not want to harp on the negatives of a challenge. I think no matter what, when you try something new, even if you fall extremely short of the expectations you were kind of hoping for yourself, if you're doing a very big challenge, there are always lessons to learn, things to take away, so I'm going to try to focus on that. And along with my depth year, I'm going to kind of like lump in a whole bunch of just accomplishments in general that I made in 2019, because I think it's something to remember even as you're starting your 2020 resolutions, moving forward with your life. Sometimes, whether it's mundanely, magically, sometimes we just fall short in certain areas, and it's okay to sometimes just recognize the positives, try not to focus on the negatives, and then reassess for the time going forward. So that is what I'm going to do. I wrote down in my lovely little journal 2019 wins here, and I'm going to list all those out first, and then we'll go through some of the depth year rules that I had and how I may have fallen short of those, and then the lessons I learned. So number one is 2019 wins. I moved to Portland, and then I moved to a bigger apartment. I moved to Portland in February, and I moved to a new apartment just this past couple weeks in December. And for me, that was something that was a huge goal of mine for years, and to have accomplished actually getting the finances together, finagling it with my job so that I could then work from home, and then doing all that all at once was a huge ass win for me. I published a poetry book, which is pretty awesome. It is called, in case you haven't heard of, In Search of Magic. It is for sale on Amazon. I'll put a link down below if you guys are interested, but it's a collection of all of my poems that kind of goes through my first year as a witch and the weird vacillating feelings that I had. And I settled In Search of Magic because that's exactly what it was. Me searching for a spark of creativity when it comes to life and magic and all that fun stuff. I reconnected and made real deep connections with some awesome new friends that were really authentic and awesome, and that's probably one of the things that is just such a good cream of the crop, because sometimes when you discover a new part of yourself, for me that was witchcraft, or just basically realizing I was into the occult, and you know, I probably fell more on the pagan side of belief systems, and just knowing that made me realize, oh well, maybe I don't need to hide that away and be authentic and open. And so to move to Portland and then to do that, to be as open as I am with my beliefs and realize I can still have great genuine connections and not have to hide a piece of myself, was such a huge, that is a win for me. That is really, really awesome. I got a handle on my health. Now, originally the goal that I'd kind of put down for 2019 was to get to a certain weight, and that quickly turned into something entirely different because I had these horrible migraines. I was having certain limbs go numb. I was having these just overall bad health symptoms, and so I did things like actually went to the doctor because I have health insurance and was taking care, like using that privilege that I have, and I got them handled. I went to the chiropractor and started doing yoga, really improved my strength. I lost 10 pounds and have kept it off consistently, so yay me with that. But mostly it's just the fact that I improved my life as a whole, as my health, right? Because I think that's kind of the point. You don't want to focus too much on one aspect of it, because then it can get real toxic real quick. But when you can look at your overall like status of life and go, hey, this has all been greatly, greatly improved. My migraines, I realize, have been severely caused by my muscles and a little bit of, I guess, poor diet mixed with just bad posture and sitting at a desk all day and a repeated injury that all lumped, all these things together causes me a great deal of pain. And if I adjust my lifestyle accordingly just a little bit and change some of my diets and change some of how I look at my computer all day, how I work, when I work out, how much walking I do, things of this nature, and just naturally all made it so then the pain when it does come is way, way more manageable. So that was freaking fantastic. And then I was featured in Coffee Table Covens. I was featured in their October issue. In case you guys haven't seen that, I will post the link down to that down below. It is a lovely, I guess, witchy based magazine, and they asked me to be a feature in it, and so that was kind of like a huge like, oh, awesomeness, yes, all of the yes. And so I really enjoyed doing that. It was kind of like a little extra feather in my cap. And then finally, what I like to do when it comes to YouTube and creativity and stuff, it is a lot of like, I published, I finished, I did the thing. My poetry book was self-published. I was very excited, and well, originally I had subscriber numbers and or comments and likes, and I kept just erasing those goals. So instead, I like to look at what I have, I guess, direct control over in that sense. No, not the subscriber count, not the likes, not the comments, not the whatever's views. I like to look at what is it that I produced. So I produced in the year 2019 103 videos, and that to me is something sometimes I have to remind myself. So I get off the productivity wheel of being like, oh, it's never enough, never enough, never enough. I never, you know, if I'm ever relaxing or taking time to look at a different part of my life, then I feel guilt. And instead, doing that and always looking like, let's talk about the things I actually produced. Let's look at everything that was actually accomplished in 2019 and how I feel about it. So those are my major awesome wins of 2019 I was really excited about. And so let's talk about the depth year, the rules of the depth year, what that looked like for me in 2019, and did I do them all the way? A quick cheat answer, I did not. So the first thing I was allowed to do was experiences. I was allowed to eat out with others, drinks with others, have a lot of fun in that sense. That was great. I was allowed to see 2 new coffee shops a month. I was allowed to purchase events, conventions, and go on dates as well. I was allowed to get 2 new tattoos. I was allowed to get a black faux leather booties because the ones I had were destroyed beyond all reason. I was not allowed to buy any books until I had read all the books on my bookshelf. I was about to buy a ring light, which has now been gifted to me, and then I was about to buy replacement and or repair items. For the things I wanted to look into was mythology and just connecting to my deities more. I wanted to look into the runes, and I really wanted to have in-depth basic concepts when it came to my witchcraft. I slowly but surely kind of evolved different topics when it came to my spirituality, what I wanted to look into. So very clearly right off the bat, I definitely was purchasing clothes, and that's not on my allowed to buy list. Experiences was great. I had a lot of great experiences since moving to Portland, but a lot of it was stuff that quite honestly I could have pulled back on, or like when I think of it monetarily as opposed to in depth. Did I get to know the city of Portland pretty dang well, and I'm really happy that I moved here. But there's a lot of times where I was like, ooh, maybe I should have made more variety with that, like not just always going out to a new restaurant with friends that I met or with a date, but instead, like, you know, maybe take some more spiritual classes, or take you know, go do more fairs, art fair, you know, different things, or just look for like free things, like who says it has to be a paid for event type of deal too. So when it came to actual books, I read quite a few of them and I was very excited, but there was a lot of rereading and a lot of going back to books and a lot of just realizing that maybe there are a lot of things on my bookshelf that I'm not interested in. And so last month I ended up actually donating a whole bunch of my books to a local bookshop, or there's like little like reading bookshelves listings you like all around certain parts of Portland. You could just like drop some books off, and then the rest I took to like a Goodwill type of situation, just because I just realized I wasn't going to reread them. I didn't know why I still had them on my shelf, and or I wasn't going to read them, period. Not even once. It was just something that like I had, got handed down to me, a gift, so I don't know. But I had a bunch of them, so I got rid of a good third of my book collection, and I passed it along to someone else who might want it or need it. Now, on top of my bookshelf currently, I'm looking at it, I unpacked it just a few days ago in my new place, and there are about, what's it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10, 15 books up there that I really, really love, and they're on the top shelf for a reason, to remind me to finish them and or actually read them. A lot of them I'm midway through. I like to bounce around a lot, which can hinder somewhat of the actual finishing of a book, but it's the truth. It is what it is. I don't really punish myself now for that. If I can't sit through a book, if I get bored of a certain topic and I want to bounce to something else on my shelf, then that's fine. And so I would like to kind of continue that on into 2020 of actually finishing the books I own. But if there are certain books that really catch my eye, there were a couple of ones I've taken like screenshots of on my phone, people showing me stuff on Instagram, and or just things that I kind of just happened upon when people announce new titles, and I really would love to purchase those. So I think I'm gonna give myself another month or two in 2020, see if I can get through the 10-15 ones of them on my bookshelf and go from there, because when I'm really committed and I really love a book, ooh, I speed through it in like a day. Like, it's when I like something, it's easy in that way to tell. So book wise, you know, I think I read a lot of really great books, but I didn't realize how much I would love to reread once I got back in the habit of reading more often this past year. And that's not necessarily, I think, a bad thing. I think sometimes we have this concept of how much we should read. Like, oh, I've read this many books and that is the epitome of knowledge or taking in of information. But sometimes it's just the exercise of the mind. And if you reread something and it always is invigorating and gets new ideas in your head and or is just enjoyable, then that's not necessarily something to be, I don't know, ashamed of or punished over, I guess, you know. So book-wise, meh, that happened. When it came to makeup and clothes, I was doing decently well for a good amount of the year, but at some points I broke the original rules I had set. That being said, with it, pretty much everything I have purchased this year, subsequent a few, I'm like trying to think of things that like I really did not enjoy when I purchased. And I think there's like one possible lipstick item and then maybe a single shirt that I purchased where I was keeping track of how often I wore them, if I liked them a lot. One shirt that I had purchased this year, I liked it a lot, but a lot of times it just didn't go quite well with other things I had in my closet. And I really loved it though, and I loved the feel of it, and I was just like, it just seems silly to have this still in my thing. And I don't know, it just like had such a good attachment for me. It's actually the shirt that I then cut up and used in my poppet. And there was a lot of like just like kind of repurposing things, like turning shirts in for rags or whatever the hell else, you know, finding a new use for them. Like, how much depth can I get out of this material? How much use can I get out of this like thing, even if it's not for its original purpose? But every purchase that I did make, even though they were technically outside of my original rules, was extremely well thought out, and every single one of them I used a lot. I have a couple of sweaters I've bought recently because I needed them and I really enjoyed having them. There's a bunch of other things that I was all about, and quite honestly, when it comes to like art supplies and or trying to think of other things, video games, there was a couple of games I bought those were not at all in my depth here. Could I find a cheaper option? Could I maybe not purchase the thing? Could I've, you know, done better with the buying of something? Possibly, but mostly I look at all the stuff that I had and was really excited about it. I was really into the fact that I was able to purchase those things with such amount of thought of how it's going to fit in with what I already own, how much use am I actually going to get out of it. And so that's probably one of the best lessons I learned with this depth here, is the fact that it gave me the parameters to really look into everything and consider what it is I allow into my life and for what reason. And that leads me on to a bunch of the lessons that I learned. So the first thing is that, as I described before, buying things thoughtfully, really thinking everything through that I allow into my life, having my life be this extremely curated thing, and trying something, tasting something, looking into something. It's fine in small shallow bits, but if something is going to have a more permanent place in my life, it needs to be better thought out. It needs to have a real great purpose and fit and bring me a fair amount of joy, and not just short-term joy but long-term joy overall, which is good. Next thing that I think kind of harps on a mistake but is something that I realized and eventually I kind of just threw out the window, is how much I value good food. I love eating out with friends. I love going out by myself to dinner. I love just trying new foods and tasting something and seeing if I like it, if there's a new combination of food or beverage that I really want to test it out. And I didn't realize I was someone who was that into food before. And while I have definitely pushed myself now to like expand that way into cooking, like it shouldn't always be eating out, I also realized that, hey, if that's gonna be my thing, if that's a priority, then that's great. Then maybe I should look at the other things that I'm purchasing and make sure that I have enough cash in the backflow for the food to be a priority. Also too, as I purchase food and have, you know, food be kind of the main thing I experience around with friends, it's one of those things where if I take the time to really enjoy it, find the depth in every meal, like really savor the food, don't so much sit down and, you know, be eating while watching TV, unless that's like an experience I'm curating. But a lot of times I find myself mindlessly consuming food, and that's not necessary. Most of the last, I'd say 4 to a little bit into 6 months, I'd say 4 to 6 months, I really slowed down as I was eating my meals. I was savoring the really good bits, really, you know, seeing like, hey, the amount of money I paid for this, is it worth like every delicious morsel that I had? Or was it something that was like, hey, I paid this money, but it wasn't quite honestly, the food wasn't all that good? Or a flash craving. It wasn't even that something that I was like, oh yes, I really love the thing so much. It was just, oh, I want it now. It was a thing of immediate convenience, as opposed to me sitting there and really putting intention into my food. I used a lot of random blessing magic as I was eating this past couple of times of the holiday season, where I would just, you know, before I ate, the same way some people say like grace over their food with Christianity, I was, you know, saying that I'm being grateful for my food, but also I was casting like a health spell, a focus spell, a random thing, not just as I was cooking, but even the food I was just eating out with. I would take a minute and kind of like focus my energy into the food. And doing that, I think, really opened up to the depth of meals as experiences, and really looking into, hey, how do I slow this down? How do I really take time with this thing that I thoroughly enjoy? And the next thing I realized is a huge ass lesson, which is actually the whole reason I'm even in this new apartment, is how important environment is for me. I am not a person necessarily like one just like having a clean and organized space is having an environment for specific things. The main reason I moved was, one, that my environment in my last apartment was way too dark. It was impeding on me actually filming, getting stuff done, whether it was the noise that was coming through or how little brightness there was. I could have gotten, my goal was to get a ring light at some point during the, but it's not the same as, you know, having the ability to possibly do natural big old light windows. And two, just living in darkness, as much as a little darkness goblin that I am, that I adore it, I still am just, you know, you can't always do that. You need light and to go outside. And I was escaping my environment much more than I was seeking out experiences in a different environment than my apartment, if that makes sense. And I don't want to escape anything in my life that's a permanent fixture. I want to, you know, come home and be savored and cozied up in my place of living. So in moving, I was able to do that. I was able to find a place that had good light, had separate spaces. There's certain things aesthetically where I'm just like, yeah, no, I enjoy a witchier aesthetic. I really cultivated that in my living space, whether that's just, you know, some things that seem a little darker, drearier. Right now my bedroom's highly decorated that way. Well, maybe the rest of my apartment's a little on the brighter side. You know, I like leafy, greeny, overhangy things, so it's like always carrying over whatever I have. I want to start, now that I have some windows and some light, I want to actually get some real plants and see if I can grow something again with, you know, a little more attentiveness to it. And again, it's so much of like, oh hey, buy the luxury teas at the grocery store so I can have a good little like tea time at my place, buy good coffees and take the moment to have my morning coffee in my kitchen, in my at my dining room table, away from my desk. You know, cultivating small little minutes of luxury within my environment, and then also seeking out an environment that is overall really pleasing to me. That's one of the main reasons I moved to Portland, is that the environment is what really got me all the way. And I don't know, it's funny how it's like you can think of like, of course, moving to a big city, this is my new environment, but the fact that I kind of tried to cultivate it in my place, but then kept making excuses for why I was escaping it, overall I think really hindered some of my creativity, hindered so much, not hindered, but increased my spending, because I was constantly trying to escape, and just, I don't know, it was really a huge drain of my life. And now the last couple of weeks being in this new apartment really helped. And I think finally the last thing that my depth year has full on pulled in, and something I'm really going to try to accomplish in 2020 is giving time to think. I kind of regret the fact that I took on a depth year while also moving cities and having like a huge amount of lifestyle changes. I think sometimes we take on so much in our lives and we don't even realize it, right? Like we're like, oh, I'm doing all the things because then I have to be a little productive monster, and if I'm not, then I'm being lazy, or I'm doing this or whatever else. And when you're doing that so much, you're not really actually giving focus to the thing you're trying. This really was hammered home for me when I gave a whole month of dedication, of meditation, of connecting with a particular deity in the summer. So if you were unaware, I had a month all dedicated to Persephone, a month all dedicated to Loki, and a month all dedicated to Sobek, because I was so diligent and so dedicated to them, and I kind of really let not just my other witchcraft stuff fall to the side, because I was like, no, every single thing has to be about devotion. I was finding myself just meditating more at my altar instead of sitting down and watching a bunch of shows or playing video games. I was meditating instead. Instead of going to a coffee shop and drawing and spending money there on dinner or lunch or whatever else, I was walking around in the woods trying to connect with some vibe of what they were trying to say to me as I was sending my energy to them. It was a whole lot of just hyper focus on this one thing and all the benefits I got out of it. How much clarity you could find when you really just hyper focus and put the blinders on for a second and just go, no, this is my focus. I'm not doing anything else. I took on quite a bit, but to take it on again with the moving and new life, making new friends, trying to be in deep depth about it, trying to be in depth about my craft, about mythology, and then in depth about my health, and in depth about my fitness regime, and in depth about there are so many things in different aspects of our life, and we can't be hyper focused on all of them at once. We just can't. If you do that, then all of things suffer. So knowing that now, I think I'm really eager to kind of just slow down in that aspect, be more in the moment, be like, no, what is the thing I want to focus on right now, and for shorter periods of time. So for the month of 2020 in January, I really want to focus on my new space, getting my new habits set up. They'll probably be reflected in the videos I'm making for this channel going forward, for this month at least. A lot of morning routine, evening routine. A new apartment tour will be coming soon once everything is set up how I would like it. Just things like that, just getting really acclimated to my new space, cleansing it, greeting it, putting my energy into it, all that stuff, so I can really feel into it and see how much my lifestyle in a sense changes just by a change of my main my main dwelling has now shifted. So, and then I think we will check in February and change it along that. So lots of amazing lessons, lots of things that I failed but learned something amazing from anyway. I'm really happy I did the depth year, and I'm really happy I committed to the mindset of it for the full of 2019, even if I didn't necessarily stick to all of the rules for it overall for the entirety of 2019, because by just committing to the mindset, the amount of things I was able to learn about myself, what I love, what I'm eager to do, what I'm looking forward to, and what I'm kind of like, I don't know, making myself suffer through, was that, to me, is really invaluable, those types of lessons. And I guess the biggest thing I went most in depth with wasn't necessarily my things or mythology or even my deities. A lot of it was just myself, because ultimately that primordial connection, the connection back to I know what's best for me, going back to my intuition and really tapping into, hey, when you take a minute, take the time, the space to think through what you want to seek out in your life, what you want to do with your magic. So you kind of just know, if you just give yourself that little extra half a second to think it through, to really slow down everything else so that you can listen to your intuition. Anyway, that's the kickoff to 2020. It'll probably get a little more lifestyle-y witchy here in a bit, but I am once again making new videos every single week, so I'll see you guys next time.